Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Season 2 premiere of The Witcher. A great season premiere, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I was actually kind of surprised that the episode started immediately where the season 1 finale left off. I thought we'd kind of rummage a little bit away from that, but it's like, no, we're starting with Tissaia looking the battlefield for Yennefer, checking dead soldiers' memories. That poor bastard who got by, like, he got hurt, he killed the guy that killed him, but then on top of it, like, the horse, like, trampled his face. You're like, Jesus. A lot of people got like that, and it's like, they kill one person and then got killed by something else. It's obviously, Vilgefortz talks about the fact is, it's like, right, some of their soldiers, a lot of their soldiers died, another set of the backup soldiers died, but Nilfgaard lost at least like 20,000, because I think he was basically saying, like, in totality they lost like 9,000 to the 20,000 that Nilfgaard lost, which obviously Yennefer caused a huge dent of her own, but Tissaia was like looking all over the place for Yennefer but couldn't find her, and Vilgefortz is kind of like, yeah, she must be gone, like her sacrifice. And Ciri and Geralt find themselves on the battlefield, and these two people who are connected to Yennefer meet, because apparently Ciri saw this in a dream. So I don't, whether she's a seer or whether it's just the evolution of just like, because there's no full course of knowing all that Ciri is capable of. We've seen a fraction of that power, but apparently, like, she's been having these hazy dreams, which Geralt was having quite a few of those last season too, like, especially like the whole Renfri thing, also kind of like that haze of anytime he was dreaming about his mom near the end of last season too. So, but Geralt finding out that Yennefer's gone, and it's like, right, her sacrifice, like, she saved so many lives today, because if she didn't hold them off, she gave them enough time for backup, for reinforcements to arrive, and at the end, Geralt's like, was it worth it then? Like, at the least, can you even say that? And I think, like, Thaisa never said anything, because it's like, because despite their complicated relationship, she always took a special interest in Yennefer, because she saw a lot of herself in Yennefer, and she wanted the best for Yennefer, what Yennefer could be. And I guess for her knowing, like, right, I'm the one that pushed her to be here. She didn't want to be here. I'm the one that convinced her to be here. I convinced her to dive deep into her powers, and now she's gone. And as they're walking away, Ciri's like, who is Yennefer? And for him, it's like, it doesn't matter. Because it's a lot easier just to not talk about the people you've lost, because it's just like, what's the point? They're gone. I mean, especially for Geralt, he holds so much guilt because of where him and Yennefer left things. All, her finding out the truth about the Jinn situation. And even the Golden Dragon dude was like, yeah, I'm saving you a lot of hurt now. I can give you a little pain here until, like, to save you in the long run. It's like, obviously, we as the audience know Yennefer's not dead, but I'm curious, is this why? Because the blow was softened, because he's already lost Yennefer a long time ago. So, for him, maybe that Golden Dragon was like, yeah, like, when this time came when you would be separated, the pain wouldn't hit as hard. You'd be able to just be like, right, be heartbroken, but move on. And that was a conversation later on, too, like, oh, why aren't you heartbroken? He was like, who says I'm not, But at least maybe because of what the Golden Dragon did, kind of pushing the truth out about the Jinn situation, that it softened the blow somewhat, so that he can at least, because if it wasn't for that, he would have never gone to find Ciri in the first place, acted upon this law of surprise, which even she asked questions about that, it's like, right, how did you come to, it's like, right, your dad owed me, it's like I saved his life, from what? Your grandmother, she was trying to kill him, and it's because she didn't want your mom to marry an outsider, and kind of left it at that. Because later on, she references a story she heard from her, from Mousak about, like, oh, like a hedgehog who was able to break their curse because of love. I was like, oh, so either she was talking, like, I'm assuming they never told her the truth about her parents' circumstances. So, like, oh, so it's a story Mousak told you. So he told you the truth without telling you that was your parents' story, which is like, oh, so it's like, that was fascinating to know that she knows the story, she just doesn't know it's applicable to her family's circumstances. Because even Geralt didn't talk about it, like, because he was an outsider, he just left it at that. What was also interesting too is they are making their trek towards Geralts Home. It's like Witchers mainly go there to resupply, like get some armor and elixirs. Which I am curious, like, what is the state of their home? Like, if you're unaware, like, I finally have seen the Witcher movie on Netflix. I just never circled around to it. I needed to rewatch season 1 to get a refresher. Plus, with season 2 around the corner, I figured I watch it. I actually did like a spoiler discussion about it, but that's not going to come up until like probably well after these already come out. But nevertheless, the last time we saw his home was years ago. To be fair, it was like he was a child at the time. He even references it, that it's like, yeah, their home was attacked. And, even Siri says, oh, was it attacked because you were different? He was like, sure. He was like, because it's a complicated answer. I'm assuming Vesemir told him the truth about everything. It's a lot more complicated than that. Yes, they were attacked for what they were, but also what Deglin was doing at the time, making monsters. So it's like, it's a combination of the two. The hate for Witchers was already there, so it's like the conversation about being hated for being different, which Cirillo's obviously kind of worried about it for herself, because it's like, right, she learns that she's slowly learning about how different she is. So, but before they can make their way to his home to, like, resupply up, the fact is, Geralt decided to try and stop by a village, but the village was quiet. No one was there. So he went to a buddy's place, Nivellen. But it turns out Nivellen got cursed at some point in time. It's like, wow, you're running in quite... it's interesting situation to be in, once again, considering, like, hey, Ciri's dad was cursed as well. But Nivellen initially doesn't tell too much of the story. Like, obviously him and Geralt kind of buddy up a little bit while Cirilla, like, washes, and, it's like, oh, I'm able to kind of bathe and just finally, like, shed these dirty clothes. And it turns out, like, they sit down. And it's so interesting how, like, Nivellen's just, like, making stuff pop, like, rain down from the sky, like food and stuff. And it's like, oh, I'm supplying you guys with stuff. And we learned the truth of how him and Geralt met. It was through the... Geralt was hired by his father to wipe out an infestation of wyverns. And so even Nivella was like, yeah, my dad wasn't a good guy. He was a monster in his own right. But Geralt ended up chopping off the head of one of their wyverns and gave me the head to make it seem like I'm the one that actually killed it. And he was like, oh yeah, Geralt was like, yeah, I still needed to kill the rest for the coin and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like, he might act tough, but at the end of the day, he's a big softy, because Ciri doesn't know anything about him. It's not like he hasn't opened up a lot. He's talked a little here and there, but kind of more about the general stuff, Witcher stuff, not too much of personal stuff. So this is her first instance of hearing a personal story about Geralt of Rivia. But then, like, Nivella said this, like, actually heartbreaking thing where he was like, that was the first and last time my father was ever proud of me. And you're like, Jesus. And he talks a little bit about how he actually got cursed. He's like, even in front of the child. And Geralt was like, yeah, she's stronger than you would think. And I guess he wanted her to hear that, because it's like, right, he wants her to learn about the world. And it's like, right, you can't, he's not trying to shelter her. He's like, I can't hide you from, like, the kind of terrible and ugly things of this world. So, like, hear his story to know, like, what happened to him. I guess it's also because everything that she went through. But essentially, he talked about defiling the temple of the Lionhead spider and got cursed in the process. It's like, okay, so how do you beat it? And he was like, love and blood or something is what she was screaming. He was like, it was so long ago, he doesn't really know. And so he also talks about the fact is he feels that the world is changing, because he's talking about the they end up referencing the rapes of, what was it, Magor or something like that, which Ciri was like, yeah, my grandfather saw him. It's like, her grandfather was a drunk. He saw a lot of things, and he kind of looks at her because she had said, like, he saw them before the fall of Century. It's like, don't talk about that stuff. I literally told you to because they talked about, like, her having to dress as a boy so that she could go play games, as we saw in the first episode of last season. So it's almost like, right, we need to hide who you are. We can't let anyone know who you really are. And here you are, like, just casually dropping information that you shouldn't be casually dropping to people, because that could tie in back into who you really are. So I think that was kind of more of that scolding look of like, I told you not to like talk about yourself. I'm skating around this conversation. Don't give too much information. That's why he's like, oh, her grandfathers are drunk. He saw stuff all the time, blah, blah, blah. Left it at that. But it's interesting because, well, I don't know if Geralt's ever run into Wraiths, but in the Nightmare of the Wolf, we saw the Wraiths. It's like, those suckers are kind of terrible how they just, like, kill you. I mean, at least in the animation, they just, like, they grab you, they pop, and they will pop you. Like, in the sense, they'll grab you, like, teleport, and then you will explode into bits and pieces. It's like, because the way they were talking about these wraiths in particular, it sounds like kind of like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, like the ending of the world. It seems like it is the equivalency of what he was kind of, well, they were kind of referencing. So even the fact is that he was like, oh yeah, like Verena, like my cat or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but cats are supposed to be afraid of witchers. And he says you were the only one here. Just, you could tell from the beginning, Geralt was just kind of like, yeah, there's something inconsistent here. He also told this story, which I'm like, what is that story specifically? It's going to have to come back at some point, but it was about an elven warrior falling in love with a human, and they gave birth to a child, but like they ended up dying pretty soon afterwards or something like that. And I'm like, what's that all about? What was that story in relation to? Because they never gave specific names or something. So I'm like, I'm wondering what that's all about. So other than that, Geralt is kind of, once again, feeling like something in its place is off, you know, so he ends up noticing like there's footprints and they disappear. I was like, at first I was thinking it was a wyvern because I was like, because the footprints are in the snow and then they disappear. So I'm like, whatever it was took off in flight is what my initial thought was. It's not a wyvern, it's a Braxa apparently in the end. But Verena came and visited Ciri in her sleep, I guess because, as I write, we're kindred spirits. Like, she's like, I've never felt someone like you with such a lonely heart. Because for her, it's like everywhere she goes, she's lost everyone. Whether she, because death had followed her, so she lost her grandmother, she lost Mousesack, she lost her grandfather, her parents are gone. The only other friend she made on this trek is Darla. He's gone. Granted, he's not dead, but still, like, she always ends up alone. So, because I think Verena now, it's like, you know, looking at her like, oh, like, I'm not a monster or whatever. Because at the same time, Geralt is trying to get answers from Nivellen about stuff, and he's challenging him to like, oh, game, like every time we throw a knife and hit your dad's head, you got to tell the truth. But Geralt kept noticing his knives were off until he got a knife of his own and threw it. He's like, right, why are you cheating? He's like, right, sorry, I'm using magical knives. Because he was pumping Geralt for information about the Law of Surprise, how he actually met with Ciri, even the whole thing about Yennefer, you know, the woman he loved and losing her only a few days ago. But like, he could tell like Nivellen was up to something. And he actually went to go check the village, and that's when he found out the truth about, like, what was happening there. So by the time he came back, she was feeding on Nivellen, and he goes, well, full Witcher mode, takes a potion, his eyes darken, and that was her first time seeing him like that, because it scared her for a second, because she doesn't know all that Witchers do and are capable of. And so Nivellen, well, him and Verena end up fighting. And obviously, what Verena said kind of got to Ciri, because it's like, right, if he's hunting her, like, who's to say he won't turn against me? Like, he won't view me as a monster. Because even at one point, Ciri sees her get flung out the window, and she's like, he hurt me. Because she's trying to be, you know, get Ciri's sympathy on her side. And so Geralt and her battle it out, but Ciri's just like, no, like, because she still looks at her like, oh, because she thinks like, no, just because she has something inside of her she can't control, like, she's not a monster, like, she's not a terrible person, so, like, don't hurt her. Like, she felt sympathetic, but in that moment, just for the sake of survival, Verena, like, was threatening to kill her, and Nivellen got up and stabbed her. You know, and that was that twisted thing of, like, her arms bend backwards, and she etches closer and closer to him, twisted her head around full Exorcist style, and it's like, you, basically, it's like, if it's just you and me, like, if I can't have you, no one will, kind of thing. It's like, it's supposed to just be us till the end, and she's pulling herself closer and closer on the spear towards him, and before she could get to him, Geralt beheads her. And in the end, it breaks the curse because, once again, love and blood and everything. It's like, right, you were free from your curse, but he was like, no, like, you call this freedom? Like, I'm without the person I love. She accepted me. She saw me in this monstrous form, and she still accepted me. Despite all that, she loved me, and I loved her. So, I let her feed on me, but that wasn't enough. He looked the other way anytime she went out and killed anybody from the nearby village. That's why Geralt did this. Despite everything, it's like, right, she was still a monster through and through, but he was like, no, she wasn't. She loved me. Because the sad thing is, Nivellen was the monster in his own right. Once again, humans can be just as monstrous as any monster. Because it turns out the real reason why Nivellen got cursed is because he raped the priestess. At that temple, he hid and warped the truth, and it's like, despite what I did, but I think there's a deeper thing that could be read there. Like, maybe it's like I think there's layers. I mean, it could go back and forth. I feel like, one, you could be like, right, maybe she's a monster that recognizes another monster, and it's like, right, you've done monstrous things and I've done monstrous things, so we're quite the pair. Or is it just because it's just supposed to just be indicative of, like, right, as a human, he did some terrible things. That's why he never... Because he talked about trying to kill himself, but the curse made it so that he came back over and over again. And it's like he tried to break his curse from time to time, but it's like, now in the grand scheme of things, he did kind of talk about, like, right, this is the punishment he deserves, and now we know why. He never even admitted to... Because I guess he didn't want Ciri to look at him like that way. He didn't want Geralt to look at him that way. And I think there's almost like this longer, like, sad rollout of events, because maybe, and I'm not saying this is exact, but maybe Geralt, like, giving him that moment, like cutting off the wyvern's head, trying to make him impress his dad. He's like, yeah, first and last time my dad was ever proud of me, and just he grew some complex and just became a shitty person because of all of that, because at the end he got a little taste of his father's love, but it was never enough, and he forced himself on a priestess because of just, like, shitty self-confidence, and just being maybe just his dad being a terrible person rubbed off on him. I don't know. I'm not trying to justify, like, that's why I'm just wondering, like, maybe there's some lane in there that maybe if Geralt hadn't done that, like, maybe things would have played out differently. Like, I don't know if Geralt, like, thinks that far back, because he has had a tendency to kind of think, like, right, if I had made different actions, and the show is very good about showing, like, right, like, maybe if things had played out differently, who knows how, well, things would be now. So, that maybe, like, him helping out Nivellen all those years ago created something inside of him, almost maybe this, need to feel like he deserves things, and that led him to have, like, go off and do something terrible. But, like, once again, he was trying to punish himself, and it's like, right, here... Ciri was feeling bad for him because it's like, oh, like, they have a love story, she wasn't a monster and stuff. But Geralt did talk about, like, love and blood, love is something, like, even the most powerful mages have been trying to figure out at the end result, at the end of the day, And just hearing that truth about Nivellen, he just ends up walking. He's like, no, like, end me with your sword. He's like, no, you're mortal now. If you want to die, like, do it by your own hands. I won't. Like, because also it's like, I'm not going to give you the easy way out because of what you've done. Like, you're guilt-ridden and stuff like that. You're alone right now. It's like, that's on you. If you want to take the easy way out, like, I'm not going to help you. You make that choice. You do it yourself. So... But Cirilla, after that whole experience, was just like, right, sometimes she's like, I feel like there's something inside of me that can burn the entire world because I'm afraid of it, And so she's saying, like, she doesn't want to be like, because she kind of feels like that Verena type of thing of, like, Verena wasn't a monster by choice, it was just kind of in her nature, but that was kind of also the point, Geralt was saying, is like, there's no breaking away from what you are. If you're a monster, that's what you are. And Cirilla's kind of worried, like, what if I'm a monster? What I'm capable of? Because she knows she's hurt people before. Yes, it's been in self-defense, but still. She's scared of, like, what's going to happen. But Geralt's like, no matter what happens, I will protect you. Because it's about, fear is an illness. It's a thing of, you have to face it. That's the only way you can really combat it, which facing it is not easy, but he's like, I'm going to be here every step of the way. I won't let anything happen to you. So, it's definitely going to be interesting to see the progression. Like, I think this is kind of like a hard situation kind of out. Like, obviously, Cirilla's seen things about the world, but once again, I think that's the point that Geralt was trying to get across too with this whole thing. He wanted her to see the side of things because he was like, right, when I tell you to do something, do it. Because Ciri's very like, no, like anytime he told her to do something, he would do the opposite of it. Oh, when I told her not to speak, she'd be very vocal. And then when I tell her to do something, she'd just do the opposite. But it's also like, right, because I'm doing what's best for you in the end. Like, I have a little more experience out in this world. Like, you are my responsibility. You know, just letting her see how complicated the world is and that he has a better understanding of how things kind of operate out here. But also trying to appease her to be like, I'm not going to ever hunt you down. Like, I'm going to protect you. You're not going to become that type of monster. But it's showing that, you know, given an opportunity, like, we all, you know, it's not just monsters, because he knows like who they are, and once again how much he knows about their history, like how much Vesemir told them the truth about everything about their home getting attacked all those years ago and what Declan was up to. We'll have to wait and find out. But other than that, we had some elements of was it Eratuga, Tisea. It's, you know, we find out that, you know, like, Triss is still alive, luckily. They're mending to everyone that's majorly hurt but survived the fight. Well, Fringilla's uncle is like, oh, was she there? It's like, oh, yeah, she led Niflgaard to do what they did, so your niece is lost to us because she basically kind of pushed away our way of doing things, so now it's a conversation of what to do about their captor, their prisoner, to pump him for information. And it turns out that person is Cahir. It's like, I wonder how they managed that. Well, the last time we saw Cahir was after he went toe-to-toe with, God, home dude. I said his name earlier and I'm blanking on it. The guy that Tisea is pretty close to. But, obviously, like, this whole Yennefer thing is kind of broken her in a way that because he believes like, oh, like I was chosen by the White Flame to accomplish what we're doing, and Tisea is like, right, I will like inflict pain on your memories and everything. So she's digging her fingers into his head, and it's like, I'll show you something to really scream about. But she's like, right, this I know you want to scream, but this is just the beginning. Like, I'll really push you to have something to scream about, because you took away someone that was very important to me. And I'm trying to, because she's trying to understand what Niflgaard's end game is, like what they have planned, you know. So at the same time, we find, well, like I said, Yennefer is alive, but she's with Fringilla as well as survivors of the battle who are escaping. But Fringilla is bringing Yennefer not because it's like, oh, I'll be able to sway you to our side. It's because she wants to offer Yennefer up as a sacrifice, because it's like, cool, like we go back, the Emperor's not going to be too happy about things going down the way it did. So, we have to, she needs some way of remedying this, at least appeasing the potential like fallout, because she's the one that led the charge on this. It was supposed to be an easy thing because they were mainly driven by, well, they're fanatics of their cause, but also there's the circumstances of Cirilla, because others are saying like, we don't have to do this, like we don't have to go so hard in the paint, but like Fringilla and Cahir are the ones who kind of really pushed it, and it's like, yeah, they have to walk away with their tails between their legs. And obviously, like, Fringilla is talking about the fact is that she can be all about this, but even Yennefer is like, yeah, but you claim all that, but you're basically bending yourself to someone else's will. And it's like, oh, we can't all just, like, shirk our duties like you did, you know? Because it's also like, right, the others aren't going to, like, herald you as some hero. You broke their rules. You used fire magic. Which even the movie touched on, like, apparently that is a big deal. They never really went into it. Well, they did bring up, like, fire magic is illegal, but they never really went into it too much. But it's also, it seems like it's because it's such a hard magic to control, so that's why it's kind of a big no-no. But a lot of that kind of got cut short when they're suddenly attacked, and literally every soldier with them is murdered except for Yennefer and Fringilla. So who's this mysterious attacker? For what purpose are they being attacked? Like, what's going on here? we'll have to wait and see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the rest of the season has in store for us. Like always, I am watching these and reviewing these one episode at a time, so I will be releasing these all at once. So if you're listening to this, or this is uploaded on YouTube, that means the other episodes are up as well, so do keep that in mind. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.